Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Medlock Post radio show. This is where we educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower. The views and opinions on the Medlock Post radio show are those of the host and guests. They are not necessarily the views and opinions of Blog Talk Radio, Spreaker.com, its corporations, affiliates, or any other podcast streaming services. Thank you for joining the show today, and here is your host, Richard G. Medlock.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, Richard G. Medlock. This is where we educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower. For those of you that need straight talk, you are at the right place. For those of you that want straight talk, you are in the right place. We straight talk at the Medlock Post. We go right at it. We do our research. We give you the facts. You make the decisions. We want you to think, start asking questions. There's nowhere out there in the universe that says you cannot question anything. Now, the Democratic Marxists don't want you to question them about anything because they're not going to give you the answer anyway. They're going to beat around the bush. On this day, well, before we get into that, this is episode 78 on November 4th, 2022. We are 4 days away from the midterm elections. 4 days. Have you made your mind up? A lot of people that had their minds made up are switching. They have had it with the far left progressive policies that are bringing down America, that are hurting the economy, that are hurting families' purses, and they're tired of it. Now, I know polls are flying all over the place out there, folks. Ignore the polls. Go vote. Polls are nothing but a propaganda tool a lot of the time. Depends on who you go to. But when you see an ABC poll or CNN something poll, be careful, folks. and you got to look at who they, what was the breakdown? Was it 70% Democratic voters versus 20% Republican and 10% Independent? That's a skewed poll. That doesn't mean anything. All right. October jobs report just came out a few minutes ago, up 261,000. 29,000 of that was government employees. Earnings are down. 34.5 hours average work week. That's about steady. The unemployment rate ticked up from 3.5 to 3.7%. The earnings ticked up 0.4%. But again, inflation is 0.5 or 0.6% or higher. So you're still losing, earnings might go up, but you're still losing buying power. The participation rate is 62.7. Folks, 2 years ago, the participation rate when Trump was still in office was 67-point-something%. It was over 67%. Now we're down to 62%. What kind of decrease is that? What is? Let me pull out my trusty calculator here, and so that's 5 divided by 67%. That's 7.5%. So participation rate is down 7.5% in employment area. The 2-year bond yield this morning is 4.76%. The 10-year is at 4.2%. So that inverse curve, the 2 years higher than the 10-year, is still recessionary signaling. And the CEOs around the country are saying it's going to get worse. Now, corporations this week, 1 week before the election, this is interesting, have starting to announce layoffs, anywhere from 12% of workforce to 20% of workforce. Amazon yesterday issued a hiring freeze right before the holidays. Normally, they're hiring 200,000 people to help them with the holiday buying, the extra work to be done. Walmart, they normally hire 100, 150,000. They're only hiring 40,000 or somewhere in that area. I'm trying to think off the top of my head what that number was, but it was low. Other people haven't even announced. Out of this jobs report this morning, in October, retail trade only added 7,000 workers. Normally, this time of year, they're adding workers because of the Christmas rush. Add it up, folks. It doesn't look good. All right. Throw this in and then get going here. The title of the show today is The Republic of the United States. That's right. The Republic of the United States. We pledge allegiance to the Republic of the United States, for which it stands. New Mexico, the government border security, the Border Patrol, reported in New Mexico in October over 200,000 plus encounters with illegals. And they're saying 2,000 plus a day get away. They're crossing the border. We see it because we have cameras and stuff out there, the drones, watching them go across, but we don't encounter them. That's 60,000 a month. Where are they going? Question we need to know. And who are they? All right. Today, November 4th, 1980, Ronald Reagan is elected President of the United States for the first time. There it is. I'm trying to find his soundbite. Ronald Reagan said, quote, "Don't be afraid to see what you see," unquote. Don't be afraid to see what you see. That's why I said if you want straight talk, this is the place to be. And if you need straight talk, this is the place to be. Great short quote. Don't be afraid to see what you see. All right. He was elected president for the first time, reelected, and both times was a landslide. By the way, you know that. Well, those that were alive then, you know that. But in the GOP convention of 1980, and I'm going to play part of his speech. It's a minute long. Listen to this counsel he gives us as citizens.
Isn't it once again time to renew our compact of freedom? To pledge to each other, all that is best in our lives, all that gives meaning to them, for the sake of this our beloved and blessed land. Together, let us make this a new beginning. Let us make a commitment to care for the needy, to teach our children the virtues handed down to us by our families, to have the courage to defend those values and virtues and the willingness to sacrifice for them. Let us pledge to restore in our time the American spirit of voluntary service, of cooperation, of private and community initiative, a spirit that flows like a deep and mighty river through the history of our nation.
Powerful words. Commitment. Duty. Teach values, principles. To who? Our children. Teach them the true history of the United States. I'll get some more. I've got plenty of. Let me play one more soundbite from him. I love his soundbites. Let's listen to this one.
From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is made up of men and women who raise our food, patrol our streets, man our mines and factories, teach our children, keep our homes, and heal us when we're sick. Professionals, industrialists, shopkeepers, clerks, cabbies, and truck drivers. They are, in short, we the people. Their patriotism is quiet but deep. Their values sustain our national life. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We will maintain sufficient strength to prevail if need be, knowing that if we do so, we have the best chance of never having to use that strength. Above all, we must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Well, I believe we, the Americans of today, are ready to act worthy of ourselves, ready to do what must be done to ensure happiness and liberty for ourselves, our children, and our children's children. We are a nation under God, and I believe God intended for us to be free.
Yes, freedom. That's what Ronald Reagan is talking about. But he's also talking about, remember, if you listen, he says, we are a people with a government, not a government with the people. That's what a democracy is. We are a republic. The people have a government. They work for us. They should be doing our will, but they're not. They figured out how to get around that. George Washington said, guard against the imposters of pretended patriotism. When Joe Biden stands up there and talks about, oh, we want to do something about the crime in the streets, and we want to, he's lying. His whole administration lied about the Border Patrol agents. Oh, they're whipping the refugees, when in fact they weren't. It's just they caught a certain picture that made it look like. Those were horses' reins, and you got to be a horseman to understand all that. They weren't whipping anybody. They're actually trying to help them get out of the water. But no, President and Mayorkas and all those others had to go out there knowing the truth and stand there in front of the presidential seal and other seals and lie. But we the people can put a stop to that. Next Tuesday we can start. It's not going to stop it completely, but it's a start. The next step from there is a convention of states. That's where we can put a stop to a lot of things. Term limits, balanced budget, and other things that we've talked about. All right, I told you yesterday I'm going to get to this story. I've been putting it off all week. It's actually not a story. It is a quote called A Vow to Serve, and it's written by Mark Lamb. This is fascinating. Mark Lamb said this: reading about the principles of the American founding is not extremist activity. When I was sworn in as the 24th sheriff of Pino County, Arizona, I took an oath to support the Constitution. So did the more than 3,000 sheriffs serving across America. The best of us reaffirm this oath every morning. This daily commitment to the legally enshrined principles of justice is the crucial philosophical orientation that separates America from a lawless land where every man does that which is right in his own eyes. He's quoting the Bible there. There is a growing faction of elite progressives, however, who deride both the United States Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. In their telling, these venerable documents are old, dusty, and out of date. These radicals want to replace the bedrock principle of equality with the idea of equity, colorblind justice with never-ending and for them quite profitable racial grievance. Worst of all, they want to eliminate our settled and fair laws and replace them with the tyranny of power politics. I don't accept these revisions to the American way of life, and neither should you. But it's not simply enough. And here I address my fellow sheriffs to feel that something is gravely wrong with this picture of our future. We have to understand the why. And to get to this position, it is helpful to do a deep dive into our founding documents and the great men and women who first and best articulated the philosophical principles that forged a great nation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're reading A Vow to Serve, written by Mark Lamb, Sheriff of Pino County, Arizona. Where did I get to? Back to Mark Lamb. Recently, I spent a lovely weekend in sunny Huntington Beach, studying precisely these subjects while participating in an academic fellowship with sheriffs with the Claremont Institute, a think tank devoted to restoring the principles of the American founding to their rightful preeminent authority in our national life. We pored over and discussed everything from the statesmanship of Washington and Lincoln to the teachings of Aristotle and Aquinas on natural law and natural rights. Other sessions were devoted to understanding the assault of progressivism on our cherished values of liberty and freedom. It was a wonderful experience to read and discuss these great books with other sheriffs from all around the country. Like clockwork, however, the usual detractors emerged to characterize a week of talking about books as an example of how Claremont is training sheriffs to empower militias in order to take over the country in 2024. My classmates and I were labeled as extremists who considered ourselves above the law, intent on policing brutality thanks to our relative impunity. This is all so laughable, it's hard to know where to begin. If spending a week reflecting on the Federalist Papers and George Washington's rule of civility and decent behavior is the activity of would-be extremists and conspirators, then I suppose you should include me among the guilty ones. I mention this gross and purposely obtuse response not because it is worth taking seriously, but so both my colleagues and fellow citizens understand the kind of reaction they can expect when they try to educate themselves about America's founding principles. Don't be intimidated. Justice, equality, rule of law, separation of powers, and consent of the governed will erode unless we make it our duty to understand their importance and function. Our elites count on this happening, so they try everything in their power to stamp out attempts at learning. The founding era in America was, like today, a socially and politically tempestuous time. But then, unlike now, philosophical ideas were publicly debated on stage in taverns and at home. Those disputes gave light to two vibrant documents totally unique in the annals of history. Unless we, together, follow the examples of our forefathers, enemies of freedom and free speech be damned, the elemental truth upon which our nation was founded will be lost, and what replaces them will be unrecognizably bad. Mark Lamb, A Vow to Serve, 24th Sheriff of Pinal County, Arizona. I've been to Pinal County. I lived in Arizona for 4 years. Went to Arizona State. Ladies and gentlemen, he hits the nail on the head. He says, we go out and study these things, and they want to call us extremists and consider ourselves above the law, intent on policing brutality thanks to our relative impunity. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that tells you a whole lot right there from the Democratic Marxists and the globalists. They want you to turn to them to make all the decisions. Let them be the rulers and you be the serfs or slaves. You've heard that soundbite from Obama. Turn over yourselves to us, to the all-knowing sovereign, the all-powerful sovereign. You just turn yourself over to us. You're too small-minded to know what to do. They're still doing it. They have placed themselves on a pedestal as God. And we have to wake them up. Yes, we do. Here's part of an address from January 27th, 1938, from Abraham Lincoln. It's called the Lycum Address. Passion has helped us, but can do so no more. It will in future be our enemy. Reason, cold, calculating, unimpassioned reason must furnish all the materials for our future support and defense. Let those materials be molded into general intelligence, sound morality, and in particular, a reverence for the Constitution and laws, and that we improved to the last, that we remained free to the last, that we revered his name to the last, that during his long sleep we permitted no hostile foot to pass over or desecrate his resting place, shall be that which to learn the last trump shall awaken our Washington. Upon these let the proud fabric of freedom rest as the rock of its basis, and as truly as has been said of the only greater institution, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Again, powerful words from Abraham Lincoln. In 1838, long before he was president. This is what Market Lamb was talking about. Studying the founders, studying the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Federalist Papers, Madison and Alexander Hamilton, studying Thomas Jefferson. The writing, I've got quotes Paine and George Washington today. Why am I doing this? It's very simple, folks. I want you to understand where America came from and its founding and the Judeo-Christian values upon which it was founded, and what we need to do in our lives to make sure they continue. And do not let these Marxists and globalists and atheists and secularists destroy that for America or anybody else, because that's what they're doing. Abraham Lincoln also said in December 3rd, 1861, this is from his first inaugural address, fellow citizens of the Senate and House of Representatives, in the midst of unprecedented political troubles, we have cause of great gratitude to God for unusual good health and most abundant harvest. You will not be surprised to learn that in the peculiar exigencies of the times, our intercourse with foreign nations has been attended with profound solicitude, chiefly turning upon our own domestic affairs. A disloyal portion of the American people have, during the whole year, been engaged in an attempt to divide and destroy the Union. A nation which endures factious domestic division is exposed to disrespect abroad, and one party, if not both, is sure sooner or later to invoke foreign intervention. Nations thus tempted to interfere are not always able to resist the counsels of seeming expediency and ungenerous ambition, although measures adopted under such influences seldom fail to be unfortunate and injurious to those adopting them. The disloyal citizens of the United States who have offered the ruin of our country in return for the aid and comfort which they have invoked abroad have received less patronage and encouragement than they probably expected. Now it goes on and on. But the point here is, if you want to be disloyal to America, and he said here, if you want to do it to be an advantage of a foreign power, then you will pay a consequence, and so will they. So here, what are the foreign powers that we have today? Now, if we look at this time, the Civil War, so if we look at then versus now, then they had France and England and Spain and so forth that were trying to help one or the other. A lot of it was helping the Confederacy. But today, what's going on here? The UN, the United Nations, they're trying to support those disloyal to the United States. They want to be the governing body of the World Economic Forum, the World Government Forum. Yeah, there's a World Government Council. It's a World Government Council out there. They meet 4 times a year, every quarter, and have conferences and talk about how to take over the world. This is going on in the world today. And all of this is disloyal to the United States when our people like John Kerry is very good friends with Klaus Schwab, who is the CEO of the World Economic Forum. They're good buddies. Real good buddies. All right. It's rocking and rolling today. We're going to move as quick as we can. White House claims Biden always condemns political violence except when it's coming from the left. Now remember that Wednesday night he stood there, and Hillary Clinton, I read these things yesterday, I played his quotes, blaming the GOP for all this political violence on the streets. And we know that's a lie. In Wednesday's White House press briefing, Karen Jean-Pierre claimed that President Joe Biden, quote, has always condemned political violence, unquote. But as usual, the White House's blanket statements are incongruent with the reality of Biden's previous statements. This goes back to what Ronald Reagan said. Don't be afraid to see what you see. The Democratic Marxists don't want you to see what they're doing. They get the media to cover it up. In this case, it's how Biden addressed the rampant political violence carried out by radical Antifa riders who destroyed American cities, gutted small businesses, and assaulted federal buildings. Back during what Democrats would like to remember as just a summer of love in 2020, Biden, whether for political expedience or simply because he wasn't aware of what was going on in the world around him, was dismissive of Antifa and wouldn't even admit that their activities were violent. Antifa is an idea, not an organization, not malicious, Biden said in 2020 as neighborhoods burned and smoldered. Antifa is an idea. Remember that statement? I mean, we went nuts. But he got 81 million votes for saying that. But according to an Axios exclusive, the damage caused by riots in 2020 totaled more than $1 billion, making the fiery but mostly peaceful show of radical leftist unrest the most damaging in U.S. insurance history, and nobody to date has had to gone to jail or paid for it. Judges dismissed all the charges around the country, Minneapolis and Portland and everywhere else it took place. Judges dismissed the charges. They went out and burned and looted and even killed. Now, the one person who shot that policeman, he was found guilty and went to jail. That's the only one. And as of Town Hall's Julio Rosas witnessed firsthand on the streets of Minneapolis, Kennesaw, Louisville, Washington, and Portland, Antifa was definitely organized and definitely malicious. On the ground, he said, quote, a group of Antifa marchers just attacked the city's Democratic Party office. They broke windows and spray painted the building, unquote. Some of them had a hard time breaking the windows, he said. But these people and the violence and destruction they wrought are, according to Joe Biden, merely an idea and not organized nor malicious. Really? Well, more lies trying to get you focused somewhere else. Remember, all of a sudden, they stopped showing all that on the news because it was hurting them. They knew it was hurting them. So media stopped showing it. George Washington said it should be the highest ambition of every American to extend his views beyond himself and to bear in mind that his conduct will not only affect himself, his country, and his immediate posterity, but that its influence may be coexistent with the world and stamp political happiness or misery on ages yet unborn. Highest ambition to extend his views beyond himself. Yes, for some reason, I think I have my pages mixed up. I do. No problem. I just corrected it. All right. Another quote from George Washington: "The name of American, which belongs to you in your national capacity, must always exalt the just pride of patriotism." Love for country, folks. Doing what it takes to pledge allegiance to the republic for which it stands, to the Constitution, to the rule of law. Alexander Hamilton said, "When a government betrays the people by amassing too much power and becoming tyrannical, the people have no choice but to exercise their original right of self-defense to fight the government," unquote. Now, he's basically quoting John Locke there, too. And no, I don't have any John Locke quotes today. I should have, right? I mean, this was 14 pages of stuff here today. Mark Levin, one of my favorite people out there, I think he and I, our minds are kind of in the same. I'll go. We kind of think alike. I'll go to listen to his show on Sunday night or watch it Monday morning on video. He's saying things that I've said on this program, and vice versa. We think alike because we're true patriots. We love the Constitution, and we're going to do, whatever it takes to sustain it. And we're going to tell you what the Democratic Marxists are doing to destroy it. So here's Levin. He was on a Fox News program last night. Anyway, Fox News. I think it was on Hannity. Levin warns that midterm Dems are the most radical Marxist slate ever put up for re-election. Now, Mark Levin is former Reagan Justice Department Chief of Staff, so he's no dummy. And he warned that while the past several elections, Democratic Party slates have been decidedly left-wing, none have been so Marxist and anti-democratic as the one being presented to the American people on this coming Tuesday. Levin warned he's never seen people so bent on destroying this country as he has in the key swing states, which otherwise tend to trend centrist this cycle. Now, let's get we talk about Pennsylvania, and we're talking about Arizona and Nevada and Michigan and Wisconsin and other states that looks like, and Georgia, that will turn red. Governorship, Senate seats, House seats, etc. But here's something you need to focus on: the state of Washington. Senator Patty Murray is behind the Republican, the GOP Republican who is Trump-backed. she's going to beat Senator Murray. That's another Senate seat we could pick up. So, and let's not blow out Oregon here either. People in the state of Oregon are fed up with lawlessness. They're asking the question, where are the dang police? They're nowhere to be found. I mean, you're looking at tyranny and anarchy ruling in Oregon. But you have BLM and Antifa controlling the streets. Businesses are shutting down left and right in Portland and other cities because of the crime and homelessness and drugs. It's interesting that Starbucks has closed down a lot out there. But you know what? They sent a whole bunch of money to BLM and Antifa. And then all of a sudden they're taking over their Starbucks restaurants and selling drugs and all sorts of things in there. And the employees were afraid to come to work. They decided to shut them down. But Starbucks, hey, you wrote big checks, millions of dollars of checks to BLM and Antifa. You're reaping what you sow there, folks. Back to Mark Levin. He said, let's all pretend we're 10 points behind everywhere across the country. He says, get out and vote. They're going to destroy the country. This is the biggest lineup of Democrat Party reprobates who want to serve in the Senate and in the House that I've ever seen in my life. Now, I can tell you, Mark Levin is fired up right now. He has been for several weeks. And he's going to stay fired up. Levin characterized Biden, in turn, as a damnable Washington bureaucrat who spent his entire adult life on the taxpayer's dime and allegedly that of the communist Chinese payroll. Notice he said allegedly. That goes for Pelosi and Schumer, too. He said as Pelosi succeeded the late Representative Paula Burton in California in 1987, Schumer has worked explicitly in politics since his 1974 election to the New York State Assembly representing Brighton Beach. Levin said the election transcends basic right and left politics and that it presents voters with an even more dire choice. But it also gives us a clear choice. Do you want freedom or slavery? Do you want liberty or slavery? Do you want liberty or tyranny? Levin said, do you like being called names by Joe Biden and his party? Do you ever have a president of the United States who's trashing the American people? Yes, Obama, and Biden is just an extension of Obama. It's actually O'Biden. Biden declared Trump voters to be dangerous to democracy. We talked about this yesterday. They are desperate right now. Levin said Democrats are collectively gas price deniers and deniers of open borders, fentanyl, and massive debt. And don't forget, he says, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, whom he said has trashed the citizen candidates. That's right. McConnell withdrew, if they were Trump supported, he withdrew GOP funding from them. This tells you right there who Mitch McConnell is, and he should not be the leader of the Senate when the Republicans take over. He shouldn't even head up a committee. They should actually, GOP should throw him out of the party and let him become an independent. I wouldn't be surprised. Let me throw this out there. I wouldn't be surprised if, let's just say the Senate ends up 50-50 again. Mitch McConnell doesn't become a Democrat to give them a majority. That wouldn't surprise me one bit. Or Mitt Romney. He might do the same thing. back to Levin. Returning to the Democrat Party's new Marxist identity, Levin said they have successfully transformed the American Republic into something the Soviets failed at and the Chinese have been unsuccessful in for 70 years. They did it in 20 months. I would say to Republicans, unite. I would say to independents, help us. I would say to Democrats, wash this dirt off your hands and join us. This is an election between those who love America and those who hate America. And we certainly have a man in the Oval Office. Time he speaks, he's grinding his teeth, he's angry, and he's angry at you because you will not bow and pray to him or to their cause. Yes, folks. You want straight talk? We got it for you. We're here. And we're going to keep doing this. We will be here Monday. I haven't decided on Tuesday yet. That's election day. I haven't decided on Tuesday yet. We will be back. I know we'll be here Wednesday, the day after the election, with two special guests, Diane Canada of Lady Up America and Tom Herron with America. So you want to tune in on that one. That's the first time the three of us have been together at one time. No, I take that back, because when Tom was on the show about 6-8 weeks ago, she called in and chatted with us for a few minutes. So it's not the first time, but it's the first time for the whole show. You don't want to miss that show, folks. That will be 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning, Eastern Time, Standard Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central Time. Diane Canada of Up with America, Lady Up America, and Tom Aaron of Up with America. We're going to talk about the election and what's going on. How many of you remember right before the 2016 election, Hillary was running for president, and they were trashing Trump left and right, and she made a threat. She said, if I don't win the election, we will go out into the streets and burn and terrorize. Do you remember that? I've been trying to find that soundbite. I'm still looking for it. When I find it, I will play it. And lo and behold, after Trump won, that's exactly what they did. They went into the streets and burned and terrorized. It's exactly what they did. I won't try to look it up right now, but I can't. I don't have my keyboard in front of me. So we got to keep moving here, folks. Let's see. Who do I want to go into next? Greta Thunberg, the manipulated child and teenager who has been backed by the World Economic Forum. In an interview the other day, she finally admitted what climate change activism is really about. Climate change activist Greta Thunberg, who has been propped up by global elites and central planners since she was a child, is finally admitting her activism isn't about saving the environment. What? Wait a minute, I thought this was about saving the planet and saving lives and saving the polar bears and the penguins and all the ice caps. Instead, she says, it's about tearing down capitalism and implementing communist government-controlled systems around the world. Folks, she has just confirmed what we've been telling you for years. Now, they might just throw her under the bus for coming out and revealing that information. That's scary stuff, folks. But it's true, and we've known it's true. It's all about gaining power. Man, my pages are all messed up. All right. I think I'm trying to get back together here. Where are we going here? How many of you saw this? Let's go to this before we go to Thomas Paine. On The View, I guess it was yesterday, I saw the video of this, and I thought about trying to play it. But two things. I don't have a license to play their stuff. And number one, there was so much screaming going back and forth, it would be very hard, unless you were watching it, to see who was saying what. Okay? But Sunny Houston, I mean, it just shows you who they really are. So she compared, Sunny Houston on The View, compares white suburban women voting Republican to roaches voting for raid. She called white suburban women roaches. Well, the one conservative on there, and I'm trying to see her name, Elisa Farrah Griffin, just attacked her. And that's why an audio without video would be, because they were talking over each other. But she likened white suburban Republican supporting female voters to roaches asking for pesticides. Now, why would she say that? Number one, she's black. I want you to understand that. She's black. So is this a racial comment too? What about black suburban women voting Republican? Why aren't they roaches? But no, she singles out white. Do what you want to with that one. See, ask questions, folks. Why did she only single out white? She's a black woman. The dust-up happened on Thursday, I guess it was last week, as The View discussed whether Republicans had done a better job than Democrats of making their case to voters ahead of the midterm elections. And let's see, I read a poll just yesterday. I read a poll just yesterday that white Republican suburban women are now going to vote Republican. It's almost like roaches voting for raid, right? Houston explained they're voting against their own self-interest, though Farrah Griffin interjected to call that insulting to the voter. Now, what was this all about? It was about abortion. It was about reproductive rights, they want to call this. You're voting away all your sexual rights. As a white suburban woman voting Republican, you're voting away all your sexual rights. Wow. This is how desperate the left is. All they can do is name-calling and derision and lies. I saw that, and it's like, of course, The View, I don't know how The View stays on. The government probably pays them to stay on the air. I don't know how many viewers they have, but I don't know. I've seen sound bites. I have never tuned in to that program and will not. And I appreciate good conservatives that try to go on there and make a point, but you just get shouted down. Who was it that was on the show when conservatives, they just got it walked off? I can't remember who that was. They just said, that enough's enough. I'm out of here. Go pick on somebody else. If you don't want to have a civil dialogue, discuss your point of view and my point of view, then I'm out of here. But no, they do not want to support anything. Thomas Paine, you know who he is, wrote Common Sense, classify him as one of the founding fathers, although he wasn't part of the Constitutional Convention or the Declaration of Independence. But his writings spurred a lot of things on. And making the point about the view, Thomas Paine says, to argue with a person who has renounced the use of reason is like administering medicine to the dead. I love that quote. So put that into context. If you watch The View, there's no reason there. There's just hatred and animosity, and you're going to accept point of view or else. He also said it is the duty of every man, as far as his ability extends, to detect and expose delusion and error. It is our duty to detect and expose delusion and error. I guess that's what we do on the Medlock Post, isn't it? It's what Mark Levin does on his show. Dan Bongino does. Liz Wheeler does that. We're for America. We're for the Constitution. Thomas Paine said this again: you cannot undermine police authority and then complain about rising crime. Does that not apply to New York, Portland, Oregon, the whole state of Oregon, Washington, Illinois? You cannot undermine police authority and then complain about rising crime? Excuse me, isn't that what Joe Biden did the other day, Wednesday night? He went out and complained about crime, all this stuff in the street. But they're the ones that push defund the police. They're the ones that have cut the police off at the knees. But that complaint that he did in that speech was not sincere, folks. They want the chaos, division, fear, hatred, and violence. They pry on that. They crave it. Again, Thomas Paine. The slavery of fear had made men afraid to think. That's a whole sermon, folks. The slavery of fear had made men afraid to think. And think of this in the colonist time. There was like a third of the colonists that didn't want to. They were so afraid of England. Oh no, don't stir them up. They'll come kill us or something. They were afraid to do anything. I hope this does not apply to anyone in this listening audience. We cannot have the slavery of fear. But that's what they want. This is what political correctness is about. This is what wokeness is about. This is what DEI is about. CRT is about. 1619 Project is about. They want you so afraid you won't think, that you'll just fall in line and follow them like a new puppy. That's what they want. They want you bowing to them. And it's not going to happen. All right, who is this? Oh, yeah. Former Reagan-Bush official. Biden so out of tune, he's singing more from a completely different script than the American people. Robert Bobby Charles, former Reagan appointee and Bush administration official discussed President Biden's latest speech given on Capitol Hill days before midterm elections, where he identified Republicans as enemies of the people, enemies of the state, and a threat to democracy. Biden's speech comes on the heels of recent polling, which shows Americans are primarily concerned with high inflation and rampant crime. Charles responds that the president's speech last night was a disgrace and disgusting, saying that a president of the United States has never historically come out and essentially tried to delegitimize the totality of their opposition, and that's exactly what Biden did last night. Charles comments that it is really so out of tune that it's like singing from a completely different script from where the American people are. He goes on to say that the irony is that everything that Biden quoted as political philosophy really defends the Republican frame of mind, because this country was really founded on individual liberties and ultimately equality of opportunity for everyone, and that's what the Republican Party stands for. That's why the Hispanic population is moving this way. The black population is moving Republican. When you go state by state, you can see that the abandonment of responsibility as leadership by this one-party rule, this Democrat rule, has really infuriated average Americans. Amen to Bobby Charles, former Reagan appointee and Bush appointee. Now, it doesn't say which Bush, but it's probably the first Bush. This is what we've been saying. They don't want to face facts. None of that. None of that. Thomas Paine, a constitution defines and limits the powers of government it creates. It therefore follows as a natural and also a logical result that the governmental exercise of any power not authorized by the Constitution is an assumed power and therefore illegal. Now, the Supreme Court has ruled that the EPA is doing unconstitutional, illegal things to Americans. So is the FDA, so is the CDC, and other agencies out there. This administrative state they totally ignore the Constitution because they have nobody to answer to. Oh, yeah, they have to go up to Congress and give their report every now and then, and they just go up there and read a few statements, and the Democrats, oh, that's fine and good, thank you. The Republicans try to challenge them, and they get shut down. This is why we're fighting back. Thomas Paine, no country can be called free, which is governed by an absolute power, and it matters not whether it be an absolute royal power or an absolute legislative power, as the consequences will be the same to the people. Here comes that sneeze again, folks. And at another time, he said, when all other rights are taken away, the right of rebellion is made perfect. The right of rebellion. Hamilton said it. John Locke said it. Thomas Jefferson said it. George Washington said it. We're saying it. We endorse these walking papers from our founding fathers. Did you read about Trinity College in Connecticut forcibly removed 2 variations of the American flag from a dormitory window last week, despite allowing other flags, like the Pride flag, to remain for days after the incident? Roommates Finn McCool and Lucas Turco spoke to Fox News Digital, and they said they put the flags up Wednesday night, and by the next day, the college administration came to take the flags down. One was the Don't Tread on Me flag, and the other one was the Thin Blue Line flag. They hung them above the windows of their dorm room. Well, this set off the woke crowd. Two students asked one woman in the video why she was taking the flags down, and repeatedly told her not to touch their property. The woman responded by repeatedly telling the students they were asked to take down the flags. No prior request was made for us to remove the flags. The two women from administration showed up at our dorm and said we have an official order from the dean to remove them immediately. Now, this goes on and on. It's a lengthy article. And the two of them were on Fox News, I think, last night. Here were gay pride flags, LGBTQ flags, Antifa flags, BLM flags, all over campus. So they said, well, we're going to put up and show the people how we feel. This is Trinity College in Connecticut. So they put them up, and the woke crowd went absolutely bonkers and wanted it taken down. Now, it was found out later, they said, what about these others? Nobody's complained about them. However, they went to an assistant dean. The dean said our flags were taken down because some students were offended by them. In my opinion, anyone could be offended by anything, and so it is completely subjective, thus deeming it not a valid reason to take our flags down. But the school finally came out. I mean, Turco and McCall kept raising a stink. They weren't going down quietly, folks. They were fighting. And it does come to find out that in the student handbook that you can't fly anything. You can't put up any banner or flag or anything. So these woke people that couldn't stand two little American flags going up against their BLM and Antifa and gay pride and all that stuff, all that wokeness, couldn't stand it. Well, guess what? The rule book said none of it, so all of their stuff had to come down too. This is how you win these battles. You stand up to bullies, and you know the rules. There was I'm trying to look. There were some quotes online, and let's see. I'm trying to get down to things. As a conservative, I am unhappy about infringements of free speech, as well as all the anti-police rhetoric. Having said that, I don't understand why conservatives started thinking it was okay to mess around with U.S. flags. Yes, the blue line shows our support for law enforcement, and the red line for da-da-da-da-da. Well, there's a guy who's taking both sides of the street. You can't do that, folks. Here's one. The only education the government should be paying for is for veterans through the GI Bill. Amen. We shouldn't be paying for woke people's or anybody's education. Go out and work. I did. I worked full-time and went to school full-time. That's how I got through college. As a physician, former educator, and university professor, I'm going to say something I never thought I would say. Unless you plan on pursuing a career that requires a college degree, such as medical school or law school or grad school, save your money and learn a trade. The diploma you just pay $200 for, it didn't give the rest, or $200,000. Okay, let's see. No, that's not it. I have government-run health care through the VA and Medicare. The people are great, but undermanned, overworked, and underpaid. All right. So a lot of comments talking about, I like this one. Right. And take away their tax-exempt status, nonprofit status, talking about the university. Hamilton College, Lib School in upstate New York, has an endowment of $1.3 billion, and of course they have aggressively implemented DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion plan that is lockstep in line with affirmative action. which just might get overturned by the Supreme Court. Now, some states have already done away with it, but the Supreme Court is looking at doing away with it. I told you, there was a lot to cover today. We're getting there, I think. All right. One more quote from Thomas Paine. Men who look upon themselves born to reign and others to obey soon grow insolent. Selected from the rest of mankind, their minds are early poisoned by importance, and the world they act in differs so materially from the world at large that they have but little opportunity of knowing its true interest, and when they succeed to the government, are frequently the most ignorant and unfit of any throughout the dominions. Amen, Thomas Paine. He just described most of people in government. You could take this and apply it to Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. It fits them to a T. They look upon themselves born to reign, and they're poisoned by importance, that they have but little opportunity of knowing its true interest, and when they succeed to government, are frequently the most ignorant and unfit of any throughout the dominions. I love that quote from Thomas Paine. Again, if you have not read Thomas Paine, at least Common Sense. Read Common Sense. Now, you might start out, and because of the language, if at first it's kind of understanding the language of that time and how they use words and so forth, it doesn't take you long for your mind to adjust to it as you read it. So, yeah, we got a long reading list, folks. I bought a book a few years ago from Hillsdale College, a very conservative college, leading the way. A lot of other colleges have followed suit with them. And it's a book. It's real thick. I mean, it's a textbook. And I don't know if they still have it or not. I looked it up last year. They still had it. If I showed you my book, I've got stickers. I've got bookmarks. I've got page corners turned down, etc. in this book. It's called The U.S. Constitution, a Reader. And they put together tons of documents. I don't know if you can still get it or not. This was the 2012 version. This is probably how long I've had it. And it's got John Locke. A lot of quotes I give are from this book because of documents and so forth. But they also put in here, they've got a whole section on the progressives from Woodrow Wilson down, Theodore Roosevelt. It's got their writings in there, opposite writings. But it's got Declaration, Constitution, a lot of the Federalist writings in there. So it's a good read. A lot of things you said, I didn't know this existed, like the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 for states in the Midwest that weren't part of the U.S. yet. And then good reading. Thomas Paine. A lot of things in there. Folks, it looks like we've come to the end of today's program. And let's do this. This is Shadow Warriors. Yes, Shadow Warriors. We're not shadow warriors, folks. We're like yesterday. We're like lightning right now when we strike Tuesday. But this is Shadow Warriors. We're going to go out with this one. And that, folks, brings us to the conclusion of the Medlock Post Radio Show for November 4th, 2022. May God bless America.